Good evening. I am David Traub, co-founder of Save Our Sites. Tonight we have an event in celebration of Black History Month. It concerns the great American artist Henry O. Tanner that we've had celebrating and exploring Black history. About 4 years ago, we had a tour of the Marian Anderson, the great singer, her house and museum in South Philadelphia. 2 years ago, we had a program on the artist Doc's Thrash and his North Philadelphia house. Last May, Randy Mason from the Department of Historic Preservation at the University of Pennsylvania gave a program on his project, Saving Our Civil Rights Sites. And tonight, as I said, we are going to talk about Henry O. Tanner. Thank you for coming, friends of Save Our Sites and members. We're very pleased to have you tonight. I want to introduce our speaker, Judith Robinson. Are you there, Judith?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you and good evening.
Judith is a very active historic preservationist. She is a member of the Friends of the Tanner House. She is very active in the neighborhood she lives, Strawberry Mansion. And she's also a real estate broker. She not only saves houses, but she sells them as well. Judith is going to lead the program, but we also have Evan Charles Curtis Hall, who's going to speak along the way. Evan Curtis Charles Hall is the director of House Museum, a new nonprofit organization whose mission is to revitalize blighted buildings through the installation of site-specific artworks and community-centered activations. Evan is an artist in his own right. He is a graduate of the Cooper Union School in New York City and the University of Pennsylvania, where he received a Master's of Fine Arts degree just a few years ago. So with that, I'll turn the program over to you, Judith, and to Evan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you all for tuning in and welcome, and thank you for tuning in this evening. I'm Judith Robinson, a founding member of the Friends of Henry Tanner House. I am very much interested in supporting the stabilization of the Henry O. Tanner House, and we're expanding the dialogue to talk about the whole Tanner family and others who were affiliated and connected to the house. This is a very powerful story, and we're in the first phase of stabilizing this National Historic Landmark. I want us to be clear. We have something very important to save here, and I want to make sure that we're clear that it's more than just the artist, that it's the whole family, and it's the Tanner homestead. So I want to make sure that you go to the website, please, and support our efforts to stabilize this National Historic Landmark. Please save our sites. Save the tannerhouse.org is very important for you to help us, support us in saving one of the very important sites in our city. 2908 West Diamond Street, the homestead of the Tanner family home. This property has one house, I should say, many stories. I'm very excited, you all, tonight. It's not so much nervousness as it is the excitement of what we're embarking on and stabilizing this beautiful historic property. Doesn't look so beautiful now, but the history that comes out of this house gets me very excited. So that's what you're hearing tonight. We would be remiss in our presentation, I contend, if we didn't start with the parents of the famous artist. The famous artist is someone we know, but I want to talk about the foundational family that he derived from. His mother, who he did a beautiful portrait of, it's in the National Historic Gallery, Miss Sarah Elizabeth Miller Tanner, his mother, but she was also a muse for him. But his mother, there's this powerful story as it relates to his mother. She was born in enslavement, one of about 11 children born to her mother. Very interesting story of enslavement in that the master was the father of, I'd say, half of her siblings. And then there was an African-American gentleman who wanted to buy Sarah's mother out of enslavement, away from that master. And every time that this gentleman, who was the father of the other half of the Miller children, every time he came to purchase the mother out of freedom, the price would go up. And it was always some shenanigans, some fiasco. So the mother decided after a period of time that she would send her 11 children off to freedom. And that's what she did. So Elizabeth ends up in Allegheny County in Pittsburgh. And then you have Bishop Benjamin Tucker Tanner, the father. He comes from a long line of freemen, highly educated. I want to make sure we're clear tonight that African Americans were always fighting for education and also freedom, or freedom and education, whichever came first. They did so many things to make sure that happened. So Bishop Benjamin Tucker Tanner, I want to elevate him to a doctor because he was so intelligent, so well-read, and so literate. He did end up getting an honorary degree, so I won't elevate him quite to a doctor, but he did get a degree. He was very literate in that he worked with the Christian Recorder, which was a great document of the day. It was a news vehicle that not only helped people find their family who were lost in the enslavement and all of them maneuvering all around that did to our people, but it was a vehicle that showed the literacy of the African-American community. So you have these two very highly educated, literate parents who met each other at Avery College in Allegheny County in Pittsburgh. And the love of his life, I'll say, Bishop Benjamin Tucker Tanner married Sarah Elizabeth Miller, and Mrs. Tanner helped him a lot in his religious work. She was worked heavily with missionaries and helped him elevate everything that he did, in addition to being a housekeeper and raising her beautiful family. Yes. Again, we know of Henry, but I must say that his family fortified him in his strength and knowledge. His sister, right under him, highly Tanner Diller, was one of the first doctor in Alabama. Very young woman, got her degree, medical degree from Women's Medical here in Pennsylvania. And then Booker T. Washington notified her family that they needed the skills that she knew in Alabama. So she went to Alabama and took the exam to be the first licensed woman, and especially African-American woman, to in the medical field. She set up hospitals, medical centers, I should say, and she helped with pharmaceuticals. She did everything to prepare the folks in Alabama to accept quality medical assistance. The Tanner family, and I'd say their affiliates, were very prominent in going to the house, going to 2908 West Diamond Street. I won't even begin to try to tell you all of the folks who may have come out of that house, who may have met at that house. Back in 1872 was when Bishop Benjamin Tanner Tucker purchased the property. And this is a copy of the deed. He purchased that property brand new from the builder, 2908 West Diamond. And all of the research, that move to 2908 West Diamond Street was very prominent in the experience of the Tanner family. They talk about the 8 rooms. It moved them from the 7th Ward, the very congested area, to an area close to Fairmount Park, which will, and Strawberry Mansion, which will be very much a part of young Henry Ossawa Tanner's life. Here he is. He walked out of that house, 2908 West Diamond Street, walking with his father west towards Fairmount Park. And then he got there and happened to see a painter. And he declared then and there that he could do that. He could be a painter, and a very good one at that. So this property, 2908 West Diamond Street, very much a place where he felt comfortable enough and he had been fortified enough with all his family and surroundings to declare that. How dare he, young man, 13 or so years old, think that he could do that? But yes, he did, and yes, he did. There are many stories to tell. One house, 2908 West Diamond Street, one house, many stories. I'm going to put a pin in telling you about Henry Ossawa Tanner, the painter, because my co-host Evan will expound on that more. But I want to talk about Henry's niece, the granddaughter of Bishop Benjamin Tanner, and of his wife, the daughter of Mary, Henry's sister, who married one of the Moselles. All these stories to tell. The Moselles are a powerful family, highly educated, and the father of Sadie Tanner Moselle Alexander. Sadie was born in this house, 2908 West Diamond. Sadie got married in this house. She got married to Raymond Pace Alexander, 2908 West Diamond Street. And when she graduated from Penn, here she is in the picture on the right, standing on the deck of 2908 West Diamond. I want to say this. We need your help. We need your help to stabilize this property. We need your help to tell these stories. Not like we have to have the house to tell the stories, because the stories are factual as they are, but it would be a shame to allow this National Historic Landmark, this one house with all of these stories, to remain in the condition that it's in. It's about the people, but it's about the future. And hopefully you'll consider making a donation to help us support the first phase of stabilization where we are now. But hopefully you'll be inspired by our co-hosts and the next phase of this lecture as we talk about the future possibilities and the reimagining of what this house can be. Thank you for your attention as I introduce you to Evan Hall.
Thank you, Judith. Excellent job. And hopefully some of the histories that we weren't able to get to tonight, hopefully they'll be published on the website so our guests can read about the family at length and in more detail in the future. But thank you for that excellent, the excellent insights. So thank you all for taking the time to be here. As everyone said, my name is Evan Hall, and I'm the director of House Museum. And I was asked to speak about the importance of Henry O. Tanner as a painter. What was it that made him significant? What did he contribute to art history? There's a lot of different scholarship that has been written about him, and all of it is valid. But I'll just be adding another piece, an element that I hadn't come across in my research, in my study of his work, until I was asked to speak a little bit about him. So this is one of his famous paintings, The Annunciation, which I'll just do a quick deep dive into, a plunge, if you will. But I think firstly, it's important to remember that, as Judith said, that Tanner was the son of a bishop, a minister. His father encouraged him to engage in ministerial activities. He wanted him to be a preacher, but Tanner famously said, "I will preach with my brush," right? So he chose a different path, although he utilized his upbringing and the education that he received at home and from the church in his vast body of work. So this is a painting titled Annunciation, which we have here locally at the PMA, which is quite colossal. It's about human scale. Mary herself is about the size of a real person. So in order to enter into this painting, I want to bring up an ancient Hebrew text that Tanner most likely was familiar with growing up as the son of a bishop. And that passage comes from Psalm 104, verse 2. It says, "The Lord covereth thyself with light as with a garment, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain," right? So this idea that there is some being, excuse me, that is clothed with light, that light actually is not something that just illuminates, but it's something that covers. It's something that cloaks. It's something that can shield. And so when we look at this painting, we see Mary on her bed, surrounded by this curtain, excuse me, staring into this beam of light. And there's a relationship that's established between her and the light. The light is not just something that is illuminating the space. The light is something that is active, that is actually a dominant force in the painting. And it's something that is attracting the attention and the gaze of Mary herself. So within this canvas, there's two subjects, Mary and the light. But as we had just read through the scripture, the light is a type of covering. The light is a type of abstraction of a figure, right? So Tanner was famous for his use of light, and throughout his practice, his life, he depicted light in multiple different ways. But specifically, what I want to focus on is the way that he depicts light when it's within the canvas, not when the light is off canvas illuminating a scene, but when the light is actually located within the canvas. And here are three very beautiful examples with multiple blue hues, very kind of atmospheric, spiritual, and emotional paintings that he made over the course of 20 years that include the light source within the canvas. And similarly to the Annunciation painting, the light acts as a force, as a figure, as a person, as a subject, right? The light is not just passive. The light actually commands the canvas and the relationship that the other figures have to it, right? So for example, if you look to the right at the Flight of Egypt, there are two travelers that are looking at this light. The light is looking back at them, and they are engaging in a dialogue. The light, in this sense, is a person, is a figure, an abstracted figure. Excuse me. Another interesting thing about the Annunciation is this kind of covering that Mary finds herself in and amongst, this curtain, right, that connects her to her environment, or actually transports her from her immediate environment. It's a kind of, it operates as a kind of new zone, a sacred zone. And I'll just quickly go back to the full picture. She's in this kind of zone with this holy encounter, and that curtain, it loses so much detail in the way that Tanner has rendered it. And I think it's important to also acknowledge that Tanner, within this canvas, deploys multiple levels of abstraction. So Mary is depicted with the most detail. Then we lose a little bit of detail when we go to the curtain, and then we lose the most detail when we go to the light, right? And so there's these multiple zones, right, that produce multiple realities that exist within this canvas. And I want to just make a quick parallel to the work of Mark Rothko, who was celebrated as one of the champions of spiritual paintings during his lifetime. His height was around the 40s to the 60s, but what he got to towards the latter half of his life was these this large body of work that many of you are probably familiar with, that included fields of color, the color field paintings, which were abstract and highly emotive and commanding in their presence, right? They commanded a type of reverence. And so the point that I want to make as to why, one of the additional reasons why Henry O. Tanner is a canonized artist and a major contributor to art history, is because he tapped into something that Mark Rothko would get to 50 years later, right? This curtain is so similar, it's so simple. It's these fields of red that surround this young Mary, that I believe if he had, another 50 years to keep working, he may have completely left out the figure and began working with abstraction to represent the figures and represent the spiritual realities that he was very, very interested in. So we have this great painter. We have a great painter with a massive body of work, with work that's been acquired by the Smithsonian, the MoMA, the Brooklyn Museum, I believe the Met, of course the PMA. His works are at the major institutions, yet somehow we find his house to be in a state of dilapidation, disrepair, right? There is structural damage that has taken place through through a roof that is no longer sound, right? Through a hole essentially in the roof that has allowed extreme water damage to saturate all of the layers of the building, right? So I think the proof is in the picture, right? This is his home. This was his home. And we need to ask ourselves, how did it get to this point? But we also, as a community and as colleagues, need to be thinking about what it can be, how his home can be revitalized, what impact it would have on the community, what impact it would have on even the legacy of the family, right? And so we at House Museum have been working to just imagine, just think, begin brainstorming the many different possibilities that can exist within this North Philadelphia neighborhood to act and operate as a kind of a community center, but also as a maybe token or homage, a token of appreciation to the Tanner family. So very briefly, these are just two quick renderings that my team and I made. Shout out to the two incredible architects that we're working with, Austin Mayer and Marcos Herring. They're incredibly talented visionaries. But this, again, is just one proposal, right? That includes a Works by Tanner room on the third floor, a social parlor for community engagements and activations, and a first floor educational space, an amphitheater, actually, where students would be able to learn in a 360 environment instead of there being a one-directional kind of form of learning, right? So we're thinking through the question of how do you maximize the amount of impact and the amount of impact that a row home can have, right? We're working within a small amount of square footage, yet it's important to think, how do we do this well, right? How do we do this well? And it's an ongoing conversation, one that we at House are just kind of jumping into, but one that involves all of our participation, actually. And so all that being said, we thank you all for your time and for your interest. It's important to know what's going on in the city. It's important to know the history of these buildings in order to prepare them for the future and for the next generation. And so we, again, just invite you to learn more information about all of our organizations, to reach out, to send an email, to make a phone call, to send a donation, but to really, really get involved. And as Save Our Sites says, we don't, well, David says this, he says, we don't want your money, we want your voice. But in this case, some funding is actually necessary for the renovations. So thank you all.
David says that's just fine. Exactly. We want to save this site. So, well,
Yes.
Judith and Evan, thank you very much. Judith, your portrayal of the Tanner family, his ancestors who generated the great artist was wonderful. And you, Evan, giving us an idea of the actual work of the artist, the painter, really gave me insights into his accomplishment that I didn't have. I particularly like your comparison to Mark Rothko, the light that pours through both painters' work. But keep in mind, Tanner was there first. He was, what, 50 years before. So he really was an innovator and a visionary. So now I want to introduce David Salfa, who's here. David, you are there? David,
I'm here, David.
Good.
Thank you.
David is a long-standing member of Save Our Sites and has been with us for many of these Zooms and other programs. David is going to conduct the Q&A session, which will start just now. So thank you, David, and you please go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, David, for having me once again. And thank you so much, Judith and Evan, for that beautiful, illuminating talk. I definitely learned a lot. And yeah, at this time, I'd love to invite everyone to ask questions. You can feel free, if you'd like to speak, you can feel free to either raise your hand virtually or just go ahead and unmute yourself and you can speak, or you can type your question in the chat and I will read it to our lecturers. Let's see, we have one question in the chat already from Jacqueline Wiggins. Will this presentation be recorded and can it be emailed? I think the interior and the projected staging will be effective as a fundraising tool and resource. And just to answer that question quickly, this is being recorded and it will be on YouTube in soon. And we will email that out to all the participants tonight.
Yeah, I would just
Thank you.
I would agree with Ms. Wiggins that yeah, the vision, it's important to present the vision in order to effectively fundraise. So I think I agree that it could be used as a tool. Yeah, a major tool.
Great. And we have one more question that just came in from Eleanor. What address should checks be sent? To whom should they be made out? That's a good question.
Okay, if you go to the website, newly built website, savethetannerhouse.org. Checks are being accepted, and you'll see that on the website by the Preservation Alliance, so that your check will be tax deductible. Preservation Alliance is our financial or fiscal implemented website for good news, savethetannerhouse.org.
And I have put that site in the chat for your copy paste
Thank you.
convenience. And we have another question that's just come in from Josh. And it is, can you speak to Martha Rothko and or other later artists citing Tanner's influence?
Sure. So I'm actually not, I can't make the case that Mark Rothko actually was looking at Tanner's work. But what I can say is that Tanner was tapping into something that Mark Rothko got to much later in his career. And that being just the reduction of form to very simple washes of color. Matisse also began doing this in the around the I want to say the 20s, and then of course there's a history of minimalist artists that also paint and make sculptures simply with the subject being color.
If I can speak for a moment.
Yes, please go ahead.
My name is Louis Tanner Moore. I'm a relative descendant of the bishop. And one of the things that excites me about this is seeing not just a reference to Henry, who certainly is worth saving the house for and is all on his own, but the notion of the family and the community that it was part of is so significant. You talked a little bit about Hallie. All of the Tanner siblings had a degree of accomplishment. Whether it's Sarah and her husband was Louis Baxter Moore, who was the 5th African American to get a PhD, and you have another son who became a minister and was following in the bishop's footsteps, and a recollection of the course that the family's history took from the bishop growing up as a free Negro in Pittsburgh, moving to Philadelphia, but having along the way been active politically as an abolitionist, as part of the AME Church, as part of their publishing activities, and just as somebody who was a force and was part of that North Philadelphia community that existed in a way that it no longer does, but that there is still a need to celebrate and acknowledge the power of the community that got us through to these times. And so I hope that you can find a way to use this building as a marker for that kind of activity and for recognizing the strength, not just of one Black family, but the strength of Black families
Community.
in the face of what America has presented to them, to us.
I agree with you 100%. And sir, I want to thank you. I reached out to you in an email and you called me back. Thank you so much. Down to you, your generation. Let's talk about that. Yes, I almost was reluctant to even try to talk about your family tonight, but I figured I'll give it a try. But Thank
thank
you
you. It
so
was
much. And I
delightful.
knew I had to spread it out all the way to your generation. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Thank you. And hopefully we can reach out to you to get more factual information. Thank you so much.
And I saw a hand up. Samuel, was that you?
Yes,
Great. Go ahead.
Yes, it was.
he also wants to acknowledge his relative that just spoke.
Yeah.
Hi, Sam.
My name is Samuel Patterson, Stafford in Florida. Lewis, we met way back when the Philadelphia Museum of Art had the grand showing of Henry O. Tanner's works. This is very emotional for me. Henry O. Tanner is my great uncle. My father, Samuel Tanner Stafford, is a long since deceased, but is a member of the Tanner family. I have, along with my wife, attempted to carry on the Tanner name. I have 4 children, 2 of whom have Tanner in their name. I have a question, but I want to commend everyone who is here, and I want to especially commend those who have put this program together. This is the power of spirit, the power of God that, number one, has allowed the Tanner home descendants and all to continue to spread their goodness. My question is this: who owns the land and the house, the property now? And I think that's very important. And thank you.
Yes, if I could, you're down in Florida. The owner of the property is also down there too at FAMA. He is Dr. Michael Thornton, biology professor at FAMA. And we have, I would say 75% of the estate is in his name, as his father, Robert Thornton, willed the property to him. However, his father had put his mother's name on it, the father's mother's name on it, Miss Emma Thornton. Never thought about it. She died 4 years after he did that. They never took the name off. But because of that name being on the deed, it became a state a situation of 40 years. So it has to go through orphans court and that process. But 75% of it is owned by Michael Thornton per will. So we're working on that now. There's an attorney involved. And as soon as that so-called title issue is resolved, Mr. Thornton, Dr. Thornton, he's Dr. Michael Thornton, is looking for a preservation-minded organization to take control, as he does not want to be the owner of this National Historic Landmark. I mean, he grew up as an owner with his father, but he is too busy to maintain the property as it would be in the future. So in that regard, he's open to suggestions. So we're here tonight reaching out to you all to save this site, okay? We would like you to check out our website, savethetannerhouse.org for more details, but it's open for possibilities. Let's say it that way. Thank you all for your interest.
May we just share one last thing? Many of you know that Henry O. Tanner wrote daily meditations. And it's interesting to know that this paper was found shortly after his death in Paris. And today's meditation says, I realized the meaning of peace on earth, goodwill toward men. And I think given the climate of the times we're all facing, we know that he would be a person that would be encouraging all of us to maintain those symbols and spaces of hope and goodwill for all of us to be part of. One of the other significant things about his work was the imagery that he gave to family and all the spaces that we find that are important for our own personal growth, development, and the betterment of our world, which he always reminded us first started with our neighborhoods and our community. And he was committed, as Lewis has said, not just to individual accomplishment, but a collective development of all peoples. So there's this global sense of one human household. So it's extremely significant that this effort is being made. Most recently, last week, in the green room at the White House, there was a special dedication, rededication in a sense, of the painting that is in that room. And the first painting, Lewis will tell you, that the White House ever acquired of an African-American artist was the work of Henry O. Tanner. They specifically chose the painting called The Sand Dunes, Atlantic City. And he chose that in particular. If you're interested, please look, because it's once again what Evan was saying to us. It's the vista he has. It's that connection between spiritual, moral value and the lives that we live right now, and what we can do to make sure that we are one another's well-wisher. Back to light, he always wanted us to be the light in the lamp. He told each of us, we are the light in the lamp. And you know what happens. And if you look at the firmament and you think about the stars, what does he always do? He shows you, yes, there are instances where there's the single star, but then he shows you the array of a constellation, because he always wanted to know how much brighter everyone would shine. So, friends, thank you. There are some excellent works that have been written. Please don't miss Marcia Matthews' book about Henry Ossawa Tanner, American artist. Do not miss the works of Norris Frank Woods,
Yes.
who is a national, international expert on the life of Henry Tanner, and most recently wrote another book about him 2 years ago, and how he was also an instrument of social justice. So in bringing that model, the ideas you have about how each floor in the home would make a difference about how we see ourselves, I mean, my goodness, it's the fulfillment of hope we all have. So this has been a wonderful, wonderful time to spend with you and to see family tonight once again. Most appreciative. And you all are our family as well. Evan and please, Miss Judith, stay in touch with us. Please stay in touch.
Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. We need you. We're seeking you. We want all of you to be friends of Tanner House. Please reach out to us with all this information you have. We're a small grassroots organization. We just started by seeing a tarp on the roof. I'm
My
a real
goodness.
estate professional by
Yes,
a trade. And I saw that tarp on the roof. I said, oh my goodness, danger, danger. And I started to just call out to all the community of Philadelphia to find out what was going on that roof. So in that regard, we're asking all of you all to hear the clarion call and come one, come all, and help us. Go to the website, savetannerhouse.org. And we appreciate any of your input. We're so happy that you all came out tonight to hear this talk.
And on that note, we do have another question that was actually asked a little earlier. The question is from Anita. How much funding is necessary to stabilize a structure? How much to renovate it? And how much to turn it into a useful community resource?
Good
Well, I'm
question.
glad you asked. All right, so with our little small effort, and we did as best we could, we have about 32,000. The estimates for just the stabilization now, just to stop the rain from coming in, we need another 35,000, you all, and we need it quickly. We would like to sign that contract. We're negotiating right now. So we need about another 35,000 just for the stabilization, and that's pronto, okay? In addition, for the future developments to reimagine, as Evan did, we're talking about approximately $300,000 for that reimagining, and we only would take us. So 300,000 probably would get us there for the condition that the house is in. But we're open to suggestions as to how we could cut parts of the property. You know, we want to salvage as much as possible to have some remnants of what was there when the Tanner family was there. So far we see, as you saw in the video, the transit light is 2908 West Diamond Street is still there. We know we can save that. The front steps are still there, beautiful marble steps. We would like to save that. The steps going interior up the stairs, we would love to save that. There were some Penn students who were helping us along. They were scraping the paint to see what's under layers of paint. So we're going to do every effort to try to salvage as much as possible, to try to learn as much as possible. We know there has been a lot of changes, but we're looking for best practices, you all. So we're here tonight to just seek any information. We're happy that you all are on. We want to engage you. We want to make sure you know that we're open to your suggestions. We're not, and we have nothing so etched in stone that we aren't willing to listen to you all. Your family members, all of you all here, I'm so proud and happy that you all found this important enough to take time tonight to spend an hour with us. So look for us, we'll look for you. Please make it easy for us to reach you. We really are open to your suggestions, all of you all on this call tonight.
Great, and we have a few more comments in the chat. So Lonnie has posted a link to Tanner's painting Sand Dunes at Sunset in Atlantic City. So definitely check that out. It's a lovely painting. And Suzanne says, thank you for such an interesting presentation. I came by the house a few years ago after I moved back to Philly. I hadn't heard of Henry Tanner, and when I went home, I looked him up and I was so amazed by his work when I saw those paintings. I wanted to learn more about him. Thanks again. And Lonnie just says, thank you for having this talk. Great to hear more about the house as I drive by it on my way home from work.
Well,
Great, thank you.
This is David Traub. Any more questions there?
I think that's it at the moment.
Okay. Well, if that's it, then I'll make some concluding remarks, and I have a question or a comment on my own. Yesterday, Judith and Evan, when we were developing this program, I commented on the painting that you showed at the beginning of Tanner's mother, Sarah, and you said that in fact was painted by his son, Henry. And I remarked that it looks a bit like a Thomas Eakins painting. Can one or the other, or both of you, speak to that, the similarity and why there was apparent influence?
Well, I'll just say that I know Tanner was heavily influenced by Aiken to paint as a realist, but Evan, I'm going to let you handle that, please.
Oh no, I don't know if I can answer. Yeah, I mean, I'm actually not that familiar with Aiken's work. I know that he studied under him and was a protege, but no, I would have to put both side by side and do a closer analysis.
Both Philadelphia painting luminaries.
Yeah.
But one interesting side note on that is that of all of Eakin's
Maybe,
students, I believe Tanner is the only student that he did a formal portrait of.
wow.
Well, I think it to a great extent answered my question. Well, with that, I just have a few concluding remarks. First of all, I want to thank everyone, Judith and Evan, of course, for a wonderful presentation. And I wanted to thank David Sofa for being a marvelous moderator and running the Q&A period. And I see that Miss Shelby Rowe has tuned in tonight. Shelby worked with us last year. She conducted the tour that we gave the St. James School last summer, and she designed the wonderful flyer that was sent out to you. Unfortunately, Shelby went back to Texas. She's living now in Austin, Texas, but she's still working with us. So being in Texas is immaterial as far as our ongoing collaboration. Okay, so Save Our Sites continues to save. We have a program that's coming up in the next months. Early in May, we're going to have another Zoom, the subject of which will be announced. And at the beginning of June, we have our annual tour. This year, it's going to be a walking tour in Center City. I won't tell you exactly where yet. And we have a distinguished historian who's going to lead it. So those are events coming up. With that, unless there's some other comments or questions from anyone, I'm going to conclude the program and wish you a very good night. And do recall and tell your friends that the Zoom is recorded and we're going to issue it on YouTube in very soon time. Thank you.